everyone, and welcome to the Patriot News Network. This is your humble host, Jonna Giavelli, and I wanted to finally get back to doing some podcasts and videos for you guys. It is New Year's Day, 2018, and there were a lot of days where there were a lot of stories, a lot of news where I really wanted to jump out and get a podcast in. But unfortunately I've been sick, fighting a few health problems, and it's been a little rough. But I'm bouncing back, and I wanted to try to do a good job here to let you guys know some of my thoughts for the new year. And if you haven't, check out patriotmouse.com. That's patriotmouse.com. And another thing I've been struggling with is, do I put my ugly mug in front of the video camera? And yeah, I probably will. I'm old, I'm fat, I've had a rough life, I'm sick. Hamana jamana. Sometimes I'm like, what's the point? But I think as I get my health back a bit and start to feel better, I worked a really hard contract job for a year and a half to raise some funds, and it really took a lot out of me. I've been fighting cancer, diabetes now hits, and it's just been a wonderful life, as they say. But it's a new year. It's 2018. It's time to be optimistic, and it's time to look over some of the good and to talk about some of what's been going on here. So, without further ado, let's jump right in. And the first topic today I wanted to talk to you guys about is the book. The book is out. I am sending it to Mr. Trump himself. The book is called A Plan for Trump. It doesn't pull any punches. It is a race realist book about our changing demographics. The subtitle is Fighting Dysgenic Policies in America. Now, lest you be afraid, no, it does not rail against certain violent, raping, murderous racial groups specifically. But it does make a strong case that without the Europanic peoples, in high percentages in cities, you're not going to have the tax revenues, you're not going to have a safe and secure place, you're not going to have invention, you're not going to have genius, you're going to have a pile of shit. So, it's a good book. It doesn't talk a lot about Trump's promises or Trump's agenda, because frankly a lot of that has been stalled. I think a lot of us aren't quite sure what he's after or how much he's going to keep his promises. So I think, and I've often thought that Trump is a person who has a lot of good ideas, generally. He doesn't quite know how to make them happen. And then every time he turns them over to try to figure out how to make them happen, we get the Cuckistans, Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell jumping in, and they do about 4,000 hours of backroom meetings with lobbyists and bigwigs and stuff the bills full of so much junk. And the way, this is interesting, if you've ever read the bills, but the way they're always written as a change to the current USC code. So it'll say something like, change paragraph 2070 to be this word to that word, and then unless you have the entire US code with you to piece it all together, you can't read these bills. So then what they do is they give a summary of the bills to Congress, and they say, well, this is what it does. And is that really what it does? Who knows? It takes probably a year to figure it out. So the whole process is a pile of poo. So the book is out, and it covers a lot of ground. It covers the H-1B visa, or as I like to call it, the genocide visa, which is ruining the lives of millions of American software engineers, if not raping them of money and earnings, leaving them utterly unemployed and destitute or seeking new careers. It covers the changing demographics. It covers welfarism. Now, my basic idea, the basic principle I suggest to Trump on welfare is you should get a very modest amount unless you've paid in. So if you've been a hard worker and you've earned well and you've worked for 15 years, if you get sick or if you need help, they should help you, at least for a while. And I remember when I got sick with cancer, I asked for help and they said I would get $183 in food aid support for 3 months only, once every 2 years. And that's after paying in hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes. I was pissed. But if you're a certain racial group who plans on having 4 babies while flunking out of high school, you get a free house and $2,000 a month. So this system is utterly ridiculous. That's the big... We don't need to get rid of entitlements. We don't need to get rid of welfare. We have to change it so that if you're a total slag and you never work, you're not going to get very much help. But what it's supposed to be is if you're a general laborer or a scientist, whatever you are, but if you've worked hard, and then something happens, or just the economy bites you, you should get pretty good support back for a while, at least for a while. So I also talk, you'll see there's a category, a plan for Trump, on the patriotmouse.com site. And it's not a verbatim take from those articles, but a lot of the points are there. And one of the points I talk about is, we're not talking about Hitlerian eugenics, which I would argue he never even actually did. For those of you who don't know, I think there were 2 Hitlers. There was the Hitler before they arrested Hess, his friend Hess, before they kicked out Rome for being homosexual, and before basically the warmongers took control, and before Churchill started bombing German cities. So before that happened, I think Hitler was a more measured individual. And after that happened, especially after they took Hess and locked him up, by the way, that's the next book, which is called The Last Prisoner, just the real true story of Rudolf Hess as a screenplay. I hope it becomes a movie. It's not an apology for Hitler, but I'm so sick of people decrying Nazis as this ultimate evil. If Churchill had accepted one of Hitler's 17 offers of peace, including sending his best friend on a suicide mission flight across the English Channel to Scotland, bailing out of the airplane at 2,000 feet, parachuting down, if they had not taken Hess and thrown him in solitary confinement for 50 years and actually helped bring the message of peace to Churchill and the king, which we think the king got the letter, by the way. We don't know for sure. And we think Churchill laughed and set it on fire. Churchill, if you didn't know, was basically a gambler and a drunk, and he had huge debts, and the money people owned him, and the money people wanted war. So I don't even know if it was Churchill's fault, but it kind of was. So I digress. What's in the book? A Plan for Trump on Amazon, but get the Lulu book because the graphs did not make it to the Amazon edition. They rejected them for resolution reasons. They look fine. But pay for the hardcover on lulu.com, Lulu. It's a really nice edition. And I try to keep my my more serious works on lulu.com for a while, and then eventually I'll soft cover them up on Amazon. So there's also a Kindle edition, and there'll probably be an Audible edition as well. Although I don't think I have the vocal strength to narrate it, so anyone who knows a good narrator, please let me know. All right, a plan for Trump. So it talks about fighting dysgenic policies as not this big horrible thing. We have to encourage our best to have more children and discourage our worst. It's really that simple, and instead our policies are totally reversed, where welfare moms are spitting out 10 kids and our brilliant people in the Ivy League schools are worked to death and can't even get married. They're so exhausted. Unless you become a doctor. And there's a good article, speaking of doctors, there's a good article on how it's called Doctors Driving Porsches. So the chapter of the book on why it's just terrible that there's this total rape financially, because the doctors have refused to lower their salaries. I don't know if you know this, but neurosurgeons and cardiologists and certain other professions, they get like $800,000 a year. Huh? Yeah, $800,000 a year. Some of the other lesser middle-tier doctors earn $500,000 a year. And so I go into, why they have such a chip on their shoulder, because basically they're forced to go through 4 years of school and then another 2 years of school and 2 years of internship and 2 years of fellowship, and it's such a long, expensive process. And then they get out with huge loans and huge insurance costs, and then they just I worked my butt off, I deserve it. And competition is fierce. They aren't flooding doctors with H-1B visa doctors from India who got their degrees in 2 weeks like they do to software engineers. So doctors have basically, screwed the pooch, demand inflation adjustments to their salaries every year, which no other people got, and now they're making $800,000 a year. Even basic GPs are earning upwards of $200,000 a year at HMOs. So it talks about really there needs to be, a national exam, a fast track to being a doctor, where you get to skip everything but 1 year of a prep year in college. I actually wanted to be pre-med, and I had a terrible time with my absolutely shit chemistry professor who I hated, and I was just stopped me from going to medical school, basically. So I think the whole thing that you've got to shell out $200,000 first for undergrad degree and then head on to medical school is completely wrong. Now, yes, there are some programs I wish I would have had my head on a little straight, but you're 17, you're 18 years old, you don't know what WTF, you don't know. So, all right. And then it talks about education. It's absolutely ludicrous that we aren't sifting and sorting the weeds from the chaff, or I guess that's all chaff, the seeds. We've got to sort the seeds out from the chaff. And, there has to be a way of getting our best kids in the best schools with the most resources and the more educated teachers, and then having a middle tier for the regular kids who might go on to college, might not. And then we need the low tiers for the dummies, and we need the school with the bars and the goons for the thuggies. And, forcing our kids to have to try to learn an environment where everyone's just piled into the same room, or even in the same hallways, which is dangerous. You don't realize how many fights there are in these public schools, especially now with the Hispanics fighting the blacks in huge gang wars, or Hispanic on Hispanic, or whatever. We need to start separating the kids. This is not a negative. You cannot say this is taking dollars from, the poor blacks or the mestizos or whatever. Because I think it'll force us to wake up and realize everybody should not be going to college. We have way too many colleges. We only need about 100 colleges in this country. We've got 3,000. The rest of the kids should be vocationally trained. They should be learning to be plumbers, electricians, painters, cooks. What about the arts and musicians? There's so much more than training people to sit in cubes under fluorescent lights all day. So it goes into that. Plan for Trump also talks about the design of our cities, and how we're just building cities that are completely oppressive to humanity with no social meeting places. Austin's a complete disaster. We basically don't even have a mall. There is one. We have outdoor malls, but they suck because it's 120 degrees here in summer and it's 20 degrees here in winter. I think today it's even colder than that. So we really need to rethink completely. I remember walking around Japan and they had, and same in Dusseldorf, they have whole areas of the city that are just completely closed to cars. And they have little alleys where these little mini micro scooter trucks, bring in supplies to everyone. And then it's a completely separate network so that the walking street people never see the driving cars. And they can sit on the tables. Well, not in Japan, it's too crowded. But in Europe, you can sit on your tables. They have restaurant streets where everyone eats on the streets. There's no cars, there's no traffic. And not just that, but also thinking about making walking streets. We should be able to stroll and enjoy shopping outside and have our living spaces above or just right behind. Have fountains and piazzas like they do in Italy. And even closed off inner courtyards like they do in Barcelona. There's just so many options. And then what about bringing our food production into the city, which is one movement that's happening. Bringing in the green hydroponics, aquaponics. We should actually be building our skyscrapers to have built-in growing ledges. It's crazy that we build these sterile glass-sheathed buildings. It's crazy. There's so much solar, there's so much growing space on the outside of those things. We could produce so many vegetables and they would all be fresh picked. And one of the reasons why our healthcare costs are going through the roof is because our food in America is all dead, trucked in, 3-week-old, unless you have a local farmers. I mean, in Texas, what grows in Texas? Almost nothing. Yeah, we have some. But it's not easy to get to. We don't even have a farmer's market that's open in the wintertime in Austin. So there's a lot of stuff I go into on that, and it's pretty hardcore. There's a lot of F/K words in the book that were originally the full word, and I tried to miter them back. So I'm sending it to the Donald. I'll see if I get a reply. Probably going to highlight H-1B genocide on the chapter heading in the TOC, and we'll see if he gets back to it. So that's the big exciting news. I finally got the book out. And also my prior book, Zerp Zombies, which is about the banker control and zero interest rate enslavement of nations, the Yellen years, is still there. And that's a pretty good book also if you're into the Rothschilds and whatnot. So I'm just going to take a little walk through what's been going on. I think actually there's two big pieces of news beyond all the petty crime. There's this one article that's just posted December 31st. Negroid couple lure grandma from her car, beat her to death for her Christmas presents. And the eyes on these murderers are just devil eyes, it's just horrific. But alright, I'm sorry. There are two big news articles. There's two big news things going on. The first is North Korea. And I hate to say this, but based on what I've seen, based on what I've heard, we're going to nuke the effers. Troops are moved in, and there's no way to play this war as a tactical strike. There's no way to just take out a base because of Seoul, because Seoul is so damn close and they have so much artillery. If we launched 20 cruise missiles against North Korea, they would just start lobbing against Seoul and kill tens of thousands of people. So it's a very difficult situation. The only attack, and I think Trump is waiting for them to do anything, any pretext, any missile launch at all that goes anywhere near anything. That's going to be it. It's going to be a nuclear event. I'm sorry to say that, but it is. It's going to completely take the pressure off of all of this Russian collusion nonsense. I have very mixed feelings about it. I hope it doesn't come to that. I think it is justified because the North Korea is threatening to use nuclear weapons, and they just recently made another threat, and you can't do that. You just can't do that. I'm sorry, you can't do that. You keep doing that, you're going to end up a glass parking lot. So, what I think should happen with North Korea is we should just get together with the Chinese, the Japanese, and the Russians, and basically say we're splitting them up. The U.S. is going to take one of the big islands and build a big base. The first part of what's the capital? The first northern section should just get annexed to South Korea. The next section might go to China, and then the northern part to Russia. So everybody gets a piece. You know what I'm saying? Good for everybody. The problem is the Chinese will never go for it. The Russians will never go for it. They'll never, no matter how bad he is, they won't go for just a simple agreement on what to do. So instead, I think we should basically go and let them know, guys, if it comes to having to attack, we don't mean any harm to you. We fully respect your countries, and we will not attack your countries. And neither will we invade and try to establish an American presence there. And this should be told to them in very strict letters so that they know that our only issue is with North Korea, and that's it. And we'll see what happens. It's a bit scary. The other issue that is bubbling is, of course, the Mueller investigation and the Clinton crimes and the horrible Senator Sessions, Attorney General Do-Nothing. General Do-Nothing, that's what I call him. He's got to get canned. He's got to get tossed. He needs to get tossed. Rosenstein can be reformed, especially if there's a strong person in control, because it's going to be shape up or ship out. I don't think we need another special counsel, because if you do that, you lose control. What we need is a Giuliani in there. We need somebody to come in for 6 months, who's a temporary, who's a pro temp, who's going to just go in, kick some butt, take names, and, get the indictments done. Lay out all the crimes of everybody. Start all the cases, get all the research done, all the filings, get them all filed, and then withdraw and have an official new nominee to come in, so that he doesn't get caught up in it. He's out of there, and but you can't turn back the indictments because they've already all been filed. And I think that's what has to happen. It can't be a Washington insider. It's got to be a new person. And find some thirsty prosecutor who wants to make a name for himself. Why not have a go? So I think Hillary is toast. She's orange suit bound. Orange is the new theft, and she needs to be in jail in a huge way. And for the murder of Seth Rich, that really has to happen. So it's going to take time. And the thing is, she might end up in jail by the time she's like 75 and then only live a couple years. So it's kind of delayed justice, but it just has to happen, because otherwise we're a lawless society, and then WTF, All right. And then, the last big topic is, let's talk a little bit about Trump's tax plan. It's a bit of a screw job. I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm glad something passed. But when they talk about sunsetting the provisions to the tax savings to the middle class in a few years, but keeping them for business forever, I'm a little pissed about that. I'm a little pissed that the tax cuts are so meager that people earning between $120,000 and $159,000 actually see a tax increase. What the hell? It's not even a tax cut for every bracket. And then, of course, Californians and New Yorkers who can't deduct all of their state taxes. They can't deduct all the interest from their huge homes. They're going to get majorly shafted, and a lot of people see that as a blue on red or a red on blue attack. It's not a very good tax bill. It's good for business, which is why the Republicans passed it, which is why even McStain was for it. That should tell you something's terribly wrong. Yeah, it's a bit of a myth, you know. It's a swish and a miss, but at least they did something, right? I mean, at least they tried. And I'm also kind of pissed because they say, oh, well, we can only afford to increase the deficit by $1.5 trillion. Well, then why did you give $23 trillion to the bankers? Of course, they paid it back. Do you know how they paid it back? They took the money, they deposited it at the Federal Reserve. They got their 0.75% interest on $30 billion, which is like 200 something million a year. And then just wait out 10 years and poof, you've got enough money to have lots of profits and pay it all back. Yeah, great. Please loan me $30 billion interest free. We'll see what I can do with it. So, it's the tax. I don't even want to talk about the tax anymore. I give it a C minus. C minus, nothing better. All right, and then finally, of course, the border wall. Coulter's complaining about the border wall. I give her a couple of pluses and minuses. I mean, they did have to go through a process. I actually submitted a border plan. Mine was a double wall with a 40-foot wall on the Mexican side and then a 55-foot wall with turrets and guard towers on the American side with a double-lane motorcycle track so that we could speed to any point, shoot them with rubber bullets or what have you. There were no entrances in and out. The only way you could get people out is by fishing them out with helicopters. You could never pay off somebody. It was a really good proposal, and they sent it back on technical reasons because they were too dumb to understand it. So instead we have these dopey single wall prototypes, none of which can work because it's impossible to defend a single wall because it takes too long to get to a breach, especially if there are multiple breaches. So the whole thing is basically a bit stupid at this point, but having a wall is better than not having one. And I like the prototype that has the rounded top, so you can't use a grappling hook so easily on it. I thought that was cool. Should probably be electrified also. If we can use electric fence to keep steers in, why don't we electrify that top as well? And they won't know it's electrified until the first few people get shocked. So it'll help for a little while. They've already put the money out. It was passed under Bush, right? Where they apportioned the money to build a border wall. So there shouldn't be any financial issues. All Trump has to say is, Congress has already approved, $6 billion for the building of the border wall, and just start building it. So poof. But it is a slow process. They are doing evaluations now, and there's this thing about the wall has to be see-through. I don't quite understand that, but anyways, the border wall, yeah. I think we'll feel a lot better having it, but what we really need is real penalties. So if you're here illegally, it's jail time. You're going to jail. And if we send you back, we're sending you back by slow boat, and we're sending you to the farthest reaches of your country. We're not just putting you on the other side of the border so you can hop over it again the next day. And let's talk about the Dreamers, because nothing would be special without talking about the Dreamers. All of this, Trump is going to give an amnesty. I'm terrified he's going to give an amnesty to the Dreamers. Coulter is right on the Dreamers. There's zero way that this won't be an absolute flood of thousands of people with fake high school grades printed out, all these wonderful MS-13 guys with skull heads coming in by the millions and millions and millions is not these little 8-year-old adorable kids they prance out in front of us. So there's the problem with the Dreamers is there's no way to do it. And what I point out in A Plan for Trump, everyone says, oh, well, they don't even speak Spanish. They can't go back to Mexico. Well, send them to Lake Chapala, where all the Americans go to retire in Mexico. They speak English there, and there's lots of places like that. They could go live in Acapulco, Cancun. There's all kinds of places you don't need to speak Spanish and get along just fine in Mexico. So, it's all a pile of poo. I think the Dreamers, if Trump, here's what I said in the book. I said, the big bargaining chip Trump should hold out is he will give them 1 year to leave the country without facing arrest and prison. That's what he will give them. And, if that's not good enough, then then they go straight to jail. So I think that should be the bargaining chip, and nothing more. So, anyways, I'll try to keep up these podcasts and vlogs and be a little more diligent on them. I'm working on the intro, so if any of you have any cool music or ideas or cartoons for the Patriot Mouse intro, send them. I think there's a contact link on the patriotmouse.com website, and I just I'm also going to try to get set up on I'm learning trying to get set up on minds.com and BitChute as well, so that we're not YouTube beholden. There is a Patreon link set up that you can get to, so go there and you'll see how you might be able to help support me. I'm currently semi-retired. This is what I do for money. And I'm not some rich fat cat, so please, it really would help, even the smallest $1 a month. And of course, we have the Patriot Mouse store, where you can join the mug club and get a Patriot Mouse mug. And then when you do that, be sure to leave your email address, and we will keep you on our sign-up list for special members-only podcasts that we can talk a little raunchier, if you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying. And if you like this video, please don't forget to hit that big thumbs up, subscribe, hit the bell to be notified when we have live events and when the next videos are there. And I wish all of you a great 2018. I hope you all have a great year. It's going to be amazing. Politically, it's just going to be so much going on. And it's going to be amazing. So I hope to take all of you with us. And then, maybe I'll get my fat mug in front of the camera. Working up my coraggio. Avete coraggio is what my Italian professor always told me. Okay. See you guys soon. I hope you have a great day. Cheers.